Credit rarely enters your life looking like danger. It enters looking like relief. It shows up when you are tired, stretched thin, behind on bills, and desperate for 1 month. That does not feel like survival. That is why it is so hard to recognize the trap. It does not feel like a mistake in the beginning. It feels like breathing room. It feels like maybe this is the thing that will finally help you catch up. Maybe this is the one move that buys you enough time to get your life back under control. Maybe this is not the start of a problem at all. Maybe it is the end of one. That is the illusion. Credit is dangerous because it often arrives disguised as peace. It offers comfort first and consequences later. Most people do not fall into debt because they are foolish. They fall into it because pressure changes the way the mind works. When you are overwhelmed, you stop thinking like a strategist and start thinking like someone trying to survive. The next emotional hit. That is what money stress does. It narrows your vision. It shortens your patience. It makes immediate relief feel more valuable than long-term stability. So, the decision starts to sound reasonable. The car needs repairs. Rent is due. Groceries cost more than they did a year ago. Your paycheck lands. And somehow it already feels too small before you have even touched it. Then credit enters the room with a calm voice. It does not accuse you. It does not shame you. It simply says, you do not have to feel this pressure today. And that is all most people want. In that moment, not luxury, not status, not even more stuff, just less pressure. For a brief moment, it works. The bill gets paid. The emergency gets covered. The panic goes quiet. You tell yourself, this was necessary, temporary, manageable. But debt has a way of changing shape over time. What felt like help starts becoming obligation. What felt like flexibility starts becoming restriction. What felt like control starts quietly taking control away from you. That shift does not usually happen in one dramatic collapse. It happens in silent stages. A minimum payment here, a statement there, a due date you dread opening, a purchase you regret faster than usual, because now it lands in a different emotional climate. And once that climate settles in, you begin to change. You stop looking at money as a tool for building a life. You start looking at it as a tool for containing damage. That is when debt becomes psychological. It is no longer just numbers on a screen. It becomes a permanent background tension in the body. It affects how you sleep. It affects how you think. It affects the tone of your mornings and the silence of your nights. It changes the way you feel when your phone lights up and the way your chest tightens when you check your balance. People often talk about debt like it is just math, interest rates, payment terms, balances, utilization. But the real experience of debt is emotional long before it is mathematical. Because money is never just money. In America especially, money is tied to identity. It is tied to independence, adulthood, competence, freedom, dignity. It is tied to the belief that you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet and handle your life without falling apart. So when debt starts to control your choices, it does not just feel expensive, it feels personal. It feels like something inside your life has shifted out of your hands. And that is where shame enters quietly. Not always in obvious ways. Sometimes it enters as comparison. Sometimes it enters as silence. Sometimes it enters as the growing habit of pretending you are less stressed than you really are. Because the world around you is built to normalize financed living. Car payments are normal. Credit card balances are normal. Buy now, pay later is normal. Monthly installments are normal. Living one step ahead of your cash flow starts to look like adulthood itself. And when something becomes normal, people stop questioning whether it is healthy. They stop asking whether the lifestyle is real. They stop asking whether they are building security or renting the appearance of it. That is how many people get trapped without ever feeling reckless. They are not trying to become rich overnight. They are trying to look stable, feel normal, and keep moving in a culture where everything is expensive and everything is available immediately. A better car, a newer phone, a cleaner apartment, a vacation. You think you deserve because you are burned out. A little proof that your hard work is buying you some kind of life. And to be fair, sometimes debt really does begin with genuine need. Medical bills, job loss, a family emergency, a broken transmission, real life, real pressure, real fear. But even then, the mind responds the same way. It wants relief fast. It wants certainty now. It wants one decision. That makes the emotional weight lighter, even if the financial weight gets heavier later. That is what makes debt so deceptive. It often solves the emotional problem first. It makes you feel less trapped in the present by trapping more of your future. And the future always arrives. That is when the true cost begins to show itself. Not just in dollars, but in attention, in flexibility, in how much of your mental energy now belongs to bills that are already waiting for you, in how much of your paycheck is spoken for before the month even begins. That kind of life changes your relationship with income. Money no longer feels like possibility. It feels like defense. It feels like labor that arrives with no room to breathe. You work hard, but the reward never feels whole. It is already divided, already assigned, already committed to things you cannot avoid. And over time, that does something dangerous to the human mind. It weakens hope, not all at once, but little by little. You stop imagining growth and start focusing on recovery. You stop asking how to get ahead and start asking how to avoid falling further behind. Your future shrinks into a series of deadlines. That is not a small change. That is a change in identity. Because once a person starts living only in reaction, their standards begin to shift. They accept pressure as normal. They accept anxiety as part of every payday. They accept exhaustion as the price of being responsible. And then something even more dangerous happens. They begin to confuse endurance with stability. Just because you are surviving the payment does not mean the payment is sustainable. Just because you are getting through the month does not mean the month is not damaging you. A lot of people can technically afford their debt. Far fewer can afford what that debt is doing to their nervous system. The constant calculation, the low-level panic, the irritation, the guilt after spending, the fear of one unexpected expense, tipping everything over, the quiet resentment that builds when every dollar already has a destination before you earn it. Those are real costs, too. They just do not appear in the offer. And then there is the deeper lie. Underneath all of it, the lie that more access means more freedom. That because you can buy it, you can carry it. That because you qualified for it, it fits your life. But qualifying is not the same as being safe. Approval does not measure peace. A monthly payment can fit on paper and still quietly break your spirit over time. Because debt is not just a financial agreement, it is a psychological contract. It asks you to trade future flexibility for present relief. It asks whether the comfort you feel today is worth the pressure you will carry tomorrow. Most people do not answer that question consciously. They answer it emotionally, in fatigue, in stress, in fear, in the moment, when the mind wants quiet more than clarity. That is why so many financial decisions are not really about money. They are about emotion management. They are about trying to purchase a feeling, safety, normalcy, progress, control, relief. And sometimes the most expensive thing a person ever buys is not a product. It is a temporary sense of calm. That is why credit can be so addictive, in subtle ways. Not because people love debt, but because they love the feeling of the pressure easing for a moment, even when they know the pressure will return later. That moment of relief feels incredibly persuasive when life already feels too heavy. This is also why debt can become tied to self-worth. The more pressure builds, the easier it is to internalize it. You start to think the problem is not the system, not the stress, not the cost of living, not the emotional exhaustion. You start to think the problem is you. Maybe I am bad with money. Maybe I am weak. Maybe everyone else knows how to handle life better than I do. But that is often not true. Sometimes the real issue is that modern life is built to push people toward borrowing, while teaching them to feel ashamed for needing it. It offers endless convenience, endless comparison, endless temptation, and then acts surprised when people are mentally worn down enough to say yes. And worn down people do not always make wise decisions. They make relieving decisions. That is human. The danger begins when temporary relief becomes a lifestyle pattern, when debt stops being the exception and becomes the structure underneath your life, when every plan, every paycheck, every month is built around managing obligations from choices that once felt necessary. At that point, you are not really choosing freely anymore. You are negotiating with commitments your past self made under pressure. That is why the deepest cost of debt is not always visible in your bank account. Sometimes it is visible in your personality, in your patience, in your confidence, in your ability to enjoy what you earn, without immediately feeling fear beside it. Debt can make a decent income feel small. It can make a good month feel fragile. It can make a strong person feel quietly cornered. And the worst part is that from the outside, life can still look fine. The car is there, the apartment is there, the clothes are there, the subscriptions are active, the image holds. But privately, the emotional math is brutal. You are not enjoying your life. You are maintaining it. You are not building freedom. You are financing continuity. That is why the question is never just, can I afford this? The better question is, what will this cost me mentally once the excitement is gone and the obligation remains? Will this buy peace or just postpone panic? Will this expand my life or quietly reduce my options? Will this support me or will it own part of my future before I have even lived it? Those are harder questions, but they are honest ones. Because credit can absolutely solve a short-term problem. Sometimes it is necessary, sometimes it is the only move available. But if you do not understand the psychological price, you may mistake a survival tool for a lifestyle strategy. And that mistake can follow you for years. So before credit feels like rescue, pause long enough to ask what you are really trying to fix. Is it truly a money problem? Or is it emotional overload, wearing the mask of a money problem? Are you buying something you need, or are you buying the feeling that you are still in control? Are you covering a real emergency, or are you trying to quiet an internal panic that no payment plan can actually heal? Because if you answer those questions honestly, you may discover something uncomfortable. Sometimes the urge to borrow is not about the product at all. It is about the pressure, the fear, the exhaustion, the need to feel okay for just one moment. And if that is true, then the real danger was never just the debt itself. It was the emotional state that made the debt feel like peace.